What if I told you that the very symbol the Church has called evil for 2,000 years was actually the key to Christ's most secret teaching? A teaching so powerful, so transformative, that it had to be hidden in plain sight, encoded in parables, whispered only to those with ears to hear. Type "I am ready" in the comments if you feel something stirring within you right now. Look, before you scroll away thinking this is just another conspiracy theory, let me ask you something that might shake the foundations of everything you thought you knew. Why would Jesus tell his disciples to be wise as serpents? Why that specific creature? Why the very symbol that the book of Genesis blamed for humanity's fall? And here's what really makes you wonder. Why do ancient images show a serpent coiled around a staff as a symbol of healing? The same staff that Moses lifted in the wilderness, the same symbol medicine uses today. And if this resonates with your soul, hit that like button, because what you're about to discover has been suppressed for centuries, and the algorithm tries to hide videos that reveal these ancient truths. Your like tells YouTube that truth matters more than comfort. There's a force within you. Right now, coiled at the base of your spine like a sleeping serpent. The ancient yogis of India called it Kundalini. The Gnostics called it the divine spark. The alchemists called it the philosopher's stone. But Jesus? Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven within you. And the path to awakening it? That's the serpent wisdom. That's the narrow way that few ever find. In this video, we're going to uncover what the institutional church buried when it declared the serpent evil. We'll explore how Jesus actually taught the same awakening process that mystics across every tradition have practiced. The rising of the inner fire, the elevation of consciousness, the union with the divine monad. And by the end, you'll understand why they had to make you fear it. Because a humanity that remembers how to awaken this inner serpent can never be controlled. Let's go back, way back, to a time before the church councils, before the creeds, before the Bible was edited and assembled by men with political agendas. We're talking about the first 3 centuries after Christ, when his teachings were still wild, untamed, diverse, when dozens of Christian sects practiced techniques that would make modern churchgoers uncomfortable. They meditated, they chanted, they spoke of inner light and divine fire. They understood something that got systematically erased. In the year 325 AD, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. History tells us it was about unifying Christian doctrine. But what really happened was the beginning of the greatest spiritual cover-up in Western history. Texts were burned, teachers were declared heretics, and most importantly, the inner practices, the actual techniques Jesus taught for transformation, were replaced with external rituals and blind belief. The Gnostic Christians who practiced these inner methods were hunted down. Their libraries were destroyed. In 1945, an Egyptian farmer stumbled upon clay jars in Nag Hammadi. Inside, 52 hidden texts that the church thought it had erased forever. These texts spoke of the monad, the unified, undivided divine consciousness that exists within every human being. They described Jesus not as someone to worship from a distance, but as a master teacher showing the way to awaken that divine spark within yourself. The Gospel of Thomas, hidden for 16 centuries, quotes Jesus saying, "The kingdom of heaven is inside you and outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are sons of the living Father." Sons of the living Father. Not servants, not sinners begging for mercy. Sons, meaning inheritors of divine power. Now, let's cross the world to ancient India, thousands of years before Christ. The Vedic seers, and later the yogis, had mapped something extraordinary, a subtle energy system within the human body. They described 7 major energy centers called chakras, arranged along the spine from base to crown. And at the base, coiled 3.5 times around the root chakra, they said there sleeps a cosmic energy they called Kundalini Shakti, the serpent power. When awakened through specific practices, this energy rises through each chakra, purifying, activating, transforming consciousness at each level until it reaches the crown and achieves union with Shiva, the cosmic consciousness. The individual self merges with the universal self. The dewdrop slips into the shining sea. The symbolism is unmistakable. The serpent ascending the spine, bringing enlightenment. Now here's where it gets profound. In the Hebrew tradition, there's the story of Moses in the wilderness. The Israelites are dying from serpent bites, and God tells Moses to craft a bronze serpent and mount it on a pole. Anyone who looks upon this elevated serpent is healed. Jesus himself references this moment in the Gospel of John, saying, "Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life." What is Jesus really saying? He's using the language of the mystery schools, speaking in code. The serpent must be lifted up, not an external serpent, but the inner serpent, the Kundalini, the divine energy that rises through the central channel of your being. The Son of Man isn't just Jesus. In Aramaic, Son of Man means human being. Every human being must lift up their inner serpent to achieve eternal life, meaning eternal consciousness, meaning awakening to your divine nature. The Greek god of healing, Asclepius, carried a staff with a serpent coiled around it, the same symbol medicine uses today. In Egypt, the pharaohs wore the uraeus, a cobra on their crown, symbolizing divine wisdom and sovereignty. The Hindu god Shiva wears serpents around his neck. The Mayan feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl represented wisdom and transformation. Across every ancient culture, the serpent wasn't evil. It was the symbol of wisdom, healing, transformation, and divine power. So what happened? How did the serpent become evil in the Christian tradition? Simple. Control. A population that knows how to access divine power within themselves doesn't need intermediaries. They don't need priests to forgive their sins or grant them salvation. They become autonomous, self-realized, dangerous to institutions built on dependency and fear. The serpent had to become Satan. The inner path had to become heresy, and the kingdom of heaven within had to be replaced with a kingdom of heaven somewhere else. Somewhere after death, somewhere you could only reach by obeying earthly authorities. But Jesus knew. And he taught those who were ready. Decode what Jesus was actually teaching. Beneath the layers of mistranslation, beneath the centuries of institutional reinterpretation. Because when you read the Gospels with the eyes of someone who understands the mystery traditions, suddenly everything clicks into place like a cosmic puzzle, finally revealing its hidden image. Jesus spoke constantly about light. "I am the light of the world," he declared. But then, astonishingly, he turned to his disciples and said, "You are the light of the world." Not, "You will be after you die and go to heaven." You are. Present tense. Right now. He was pointing to something already within them, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be kindled into flame. In the Gospel of Thomas, he goes further. There is light within a person of light, and it lights up the whole world. If it does not shine, there is darkness. This is the language of inner illumination, of awakening the divine spark. This divine spark, this light, the Gnostics called it the pneuma, the spirit that is a fragment of the divine, trapped in matter, yearning to return to its source. It's the exact same concept as the Atman in Hindu philosophy, the individual soul that is ultimately identical to Brahman, the universal consciousness. And the process of awakening this light, of raising it from its dormant state to its fully realized glory, that's the path of the serpent. Think about the symbolism of the serpent for a moment. A serpent sheds its skin. It undergoes transformation, dying to its old form and emerging renewed. This is the alchemical process of transformation that every spiritual seeker must undergo. The death of the ego, the false self, the conditioned personality, and the birth of the true self, the divine nature. The serpent doesn't just shed its skin once, it does so multiple times throughout its life. Similarly, spiritual awakening isn't a single event. It's a series of deaths and rebirths, each one bringing you closer to your divine essence. Now, let's talk about the spine. In esoteric anatomy, the spine isn't just a physical structure, it's a sacred channel, a ladder between earth and heaven. The yogis call this central channel the Sushumna. On either side of it run two other channels, Ida and Pingala, representing lunar and solar energies, feminine and masculine, receptive and active. These two channels spiral around the Sushumna like two serpents intertwining, exactly like the caduceus, the staff of Hermes, the symbol of healing and transformation. When these dual energies are balanced and harmonized through practice, the central channel opens, and the Kundalini, the coiled serpent at the base, begins to rise. Jesus taught about this in Code. When he spoke of the narrow gate that leads to life, and how few find it, he was speaking of the Sushumna, the narrow central channel. Most people's energy remains scattered in the outer channels, trapped in duality, in the constant swing between opposites. But the narrow way, the straight path, is the middle way, the channel that opens when you transcend duality and awaken the serpent power. He spoke of being born again, and when Nicodemus asked how a man could enter his mother's womb a second time, Jesus said, "Unless one is born of water and spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." Water represents the lunar, the feminine, the Ida channel. Spirit represents the solar, the masculine, the Pingala channel. To be born again is to balance these two forces and awaken the spiritual birth, the rising of consciousness through the Sushumna, the activation of the higher chakras, the opening of what Jesus called the single eye. The eye is the lamp of the body, Jesus said. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. He's not talking about your physical eyes. He's talking about the third eye, the sixth chakra, the Ajna chakra located at the center of the forehead. In esoteric Christianity, this is called the seat of the soul. When the Kundalini rises and activates this center, perception transforms. You begin to see beyond the veil of material reality. You perceive the energetic, the spiritual, the divine blueprint underlying all creation. Your eye becomes single, meaning unified, no longer divided between inner and outer, self and other, human and divine. This is why Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness achieved when the serpent energy rises through all 7 levels, when all 7 seals are opened, to use the language of Revelation. Each chakra is a seal, a lock on divine consciousness. As the Kundalini rises, it unlocks each one, releasing gifts, powers, and levels of awareness. The first 3 chakras, root, sacral, solar plexus, govern survival, sexuality, and personal power. Most of humanity lives trapped at these levels, endlessly cycling through fear, desire, and ego. But when the serpent rises to the heart chakra, the 4th level, something miraculous happens. This is the center of love, compassion, and connection. This is where you begin to love your neighbor as yourself, not as a moral commandment you force yourself to obey, but as a natural recognition that your neighbor is yourself. That separation is an illusion. Jesus operated from the heart and above. Every miracle he performed, every teaching he gave, flowed from activated higher consciousness. When he said, "Greater works than these will you do?" he wasn't exaggerating. He was stating a fact, because he had walked the path and knew that every human being carries the same divine potential, the same coiled serpent waiting to rise. Let's go deeper into the mystery, because what we're touching now is the very heart of why this knowledge was suppressed. When the serpent rises beyond the heart chakra into the throat, the fifth center, something revolutionary occurs. This is the chakra of truth, of authentic expression, of speaking with divine authority. Jesus said, "The words I speak to you are not my own, but the Father who dwells in me does his works." He had surrendered his personal will to divine will. His throat chakra was fully activated. He spoke truth that shattered illusions, that healed the sick, that raised the dead. He spoke, and reality itself responded. The religious authorities of his time were terrified of this. Why? Because he was teaching people to access this same power within themselves. He was creating a generation of awakened beings who would no longer need temples, priests, or external authority. "You will know the truth," he promised, "and the truth will set you free." Free from what? Free from the matrix of control, from the prison of conditioned consciousness, from the illusion of separation from God. Now, when the serpent reaches the sixth chakra, the third eye, the ajna center, perception transforms completely. This is the eye that sees beyond the physical. The Gnostics called this gnosis, direct knowing, divine knowledge that doesn't come through books or teachers, but through immediate perception of spiritual reality. Jesus demonstrated this constantly. He knew people's thoughts. He perceived their past and future. He saw Nathanael under the fig tree when he was physically nowhere near. This wasn't supernatural magic granted to one special person. It was the natural result of an awakened sixth chakra, and he was showing what becomes possible on the path. In the Book of Revelation, written by John in visionary state, we find the entire Kundalini journey mapped in mystical symbolism: the 7 seals, the 7 churches, the 7 lampstands. All of these represent the 7 chakras, the 7 levels of consciousness. When John describes seeing one like a son of man, with eyes like flames of fire, a voice like rushing waters, and a face like the sun shining in full strength, he's describing a fully awakened being, someone in whom the serpent has risen completely to the crown. The 7th chakra, the 1,000-petaled lotus. This crown chakra is the throne of God within you. When the Kundalini reaches this point, the individual consciousness merges with cosmic consciousness. The drop dissolves into the ocean. You realize what the mystics of every tradition have proclaimed: I and the Father are one. Not blasphemy, not ego inflation, but the simple recognition of your true nature, the divine monad that has always been one with the source. The monad. Let's understand this crucial concept. In Gnostic and Hermetic philosophy, the monad is the ultimate unity, the one, the source from which all things emanate and to which all things return. You are not separate from the monad. You are the monad experiencing itself as an individual. Your journey isn't to become something you're not. It's to remember what you've always been. The serpent rising is the monad waking up to itself, consciousness recognizing its own divine nature. Jesus understood this perfectly when he said, Before Abraham was, I am, he was speaking from the level of the monad, from eternal consciousness that exists beyond time. The phrase I am is the divine name, the name God gave Moses at the burning bush. Jesus used it repeatedly, not to claim exclusive divinity, but to point to the divinity within all consciousness. I am the light. I am the way. I am the resurrection, and he implied, you are too when you awaken. But here's the nuance that the church couldn't tolerate. Jesus never said he was the only Son of God. He said he was the Son of God, and he called his followers to recognize their own divine sonship. In the Gospel of John, he quotes Psalm 82. Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods? He was pointing to our forgotten divinity, our true heritage as children of the living God, sparks of the divine flame. The early Christian mystics understood this. Origen, one of the early church fathers, taught about the pre-existence of souls and the eventual restoration of all beings to unity with God. Clement of Alexandria spoke of Christians becoming gods through theosis, divine union. Meister Eckhart, the Christian mystic, declared, the eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. St. John of the Cross wrote of the soul's journey to union with the divine beloved. These weren't heretics inventing new ideas. They were preserving the original teaching, the serpent wisdom that Jesus transmitted. The serpent in the Garden of Eden becomes clearer now too, doesn't it? The serpent promised that eating from the tree of knowledge would make humans like God, knowing good and evil. The church interpreted this as the original sin, the source of all human suffering. But the Gnostics read it differently. They saw the serpent as the liberator, the one who offered humanity the chance to awaken from ignorance, to develop consciousness, to begin the journey back to divine union. Yes, it brought the knowledge of duality, good and evil, pleasure and pain, life and death. But this knowledge is necessary for conscious evolution. You can't transcend duality until you've experienced it. The second serpent, the one Moses lifted in the wilderness, represents the redemption of the first. The serpent descends in the garden, bringing consciousness into matter, into the density of physical existence. The serpent must then ascend, carrying consciousness back up through the levels, from matter to spirit, from earth to heaven, from the root to the crown. This is the crucifixion and resurrection enacted in the inner temple of your own body. The ego must be crucified, nailed to the cross of matter, so that the divine self can resurrect in glory. Even the number of coils the Kundalini makes, 3.5, connects to biblical symbolism. In Revelation, the holy city is trampled for 42 months, which is 3.5 years. Daniel speaks of a time times and half a time, 3.5 periods. This represents incompleteness, the not yet awakened state. When the serpent uncoils and rises, incompleteness becomes completeness, 3.5 becomes 7, and the 7 seals are opened. This is the narrow path Jesus taught. Not easy, not comfortable, not the wide gate of conventional religion where you simply believe the right doctrines and perform the right rituals. But the path of actual transformation, where the lead of your base nature is turned into the gold of divine consciousness through the inner alchemical fire of the rising serpent. Now, here's where the ancient wisdom meets your modern life. Because understanding the serpent wisdom intellectually changes nothing. This isn't knowledge meant to be collected like stamps in an album. It's meant to be lived, practiced, embodied. So let's talk about how you actually begin to awaken this divine force within you, how you start walking the path that Jesus walked, how you open yourself to the rising of your inner serpent. First, understand this crucial point. The Kundalini awakening isn't something you force. You don't attack it aggressively like a goal to be conquered. The serpent rises when the conditions are right, when the soil of your being has been prepared. Your role is to prepare that soil through practice, purification, and patience. Think of it like cultivating a garden. You plant seeds, you water them, you remove weeds, you provide sunlight, but you don't force the flower to bloom. You create the environment where blooming becomes natural. Let's start with the foundation: grounding and purification. Before the serpent can rise safely, your lower chakras must be stable and clear. Many people try to force spiritual experiences while their foundation is shaky, and this creates imbalance, even psychological crisis. Jesus spent 40 days and nights in the wilderness, fasting and confronting his shadows before beginning his ministry. You need to do your wilderness work too. Begin with the body. The body isn't an obstacle to spiritual awakening. It's the temple where awakening happens. Honor it. The yogis knew this. That's why they developed asana practice, physical postures that align the spine, open energy channels, and strengthen the vessel. You don't need to become a contortionist, but you do need to care for your physical form. Move daily. Stretch your spine. Keep it flexible and strong, because this is the pathway the serpent will travel. Walk in nature. Let your bare feet touch the earth. This isn't mystical poetry. It's practical energy work. Grounding yourself in the physical world provides stability for the spiritual energies that will awaken. Breathwork is the key that unlocks everything. In every mystical tradition, breath is recognized as the bridge between body and spirit, between conscious and unconscious, between human and divine. The yogis called it pranayama, control of the life force through breath. Jesus breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit." The Holy Spirit, the divine breath, the ruach, the pneuma, it enters through conscious breathing. Here's a simple but powerful practice. Sit comfortably with your spine straight. Close your eyes. Place one hand on your heart. Begin to breathe slowly and deeply, in through your nose, out through your nose. As you inhale, imagine you're drawing energy up from the base of your spine. As you exhale, imagine this energy flowing down from the crown of your head. You're creating a circular flow, a circuit of energy. Do this for just 10 minutes daily. You're not forcing Kundalini to rise. You're gently awakening awareness of the subtle energy channels. You're teaching your nervous system a new pattern. Over time, this practice opens the sushumna, the central channel. Silence is non-negotiable. Jesus constantly withdrew to solitary places to pray. Prayer, in its deepest form, isn't begging an external God for favors. It's communion with the divine within. Meditation is the technology for this communion. Start with even 5 minutes of silent sitting daily. Watch your thoughts without following them. Notice the space between thoughts. In that space, the small still voice speaks. In that space, the kingdom of heaven reveals itself. As your practice deepens, you can add visualization. With your inner eye, see a brilliant light at the base of your spine. See it as a coiled serpent of golden light. Don't force it to move. Just observe it with loving attention. Attention is energy. Where you place your attention, energy flows. Over weeks and months of this practice, you may begin to feel warmth, tingling, or subtle movement along your spine. These are signs that the serpent is beginning to stir. Welcome these sensations without grasping at them, Stay relaxed, stay open. Shadow work is essential. Jesus said, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." Those words from the Gospel of Thomas are a warning about suppressed energy, unprocessed trauma, denied parts of yourself. Before the serpent can rise to the crown, it must move through each chakra, and in each chakra, it will illuminate whatever is stored there, including pain, shame, fear, rage. This is the dark night of the soul that mystics speak of. You'll face your demons. You'll see the ways you've betrayed yourself and others. You'll feel emotions you've spent years avoiding. This is where most people quit the path. They want enlightenment without the purification. They want the crown without the crucifixion. But there's no bypass. The only way out is through. So keep a journal. Write honestly about what arises. If you have access to a therapist or spiritual guide who understands this process, work with them. Cry when you need to cry. Rage in healthy ways. Punch a pillow. Go to the woods and scream. Let the stored energy move through you and release. This isn't indulgent. This is necessary. Every emotion you release clears the channel for divine energy to flow. Live ethically. This isn't about rigid moralism or guilt. It's about energy conservation. Every time you lie, you create energetic dissonance. Every time you harm another, you harm yourself, because at the level of the monad, there is no other. Every time you act from ego rather than from your higher self, you strengthen the very patterns that keep the serpent sleeping. Jesus gave simple guidance. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. When you align your actions with love, you naturally conserve and elevate your energy. Practice celibacy or sacred sexuality. This one makes modern people uncomfortable, but it's crucial to understand. Sexual energy is creative life force. It's literally the energy that creates new life. In most people, this powerful energy dissipates through constant sexual release. The esoteric teaching, found in Tantra, in Taoism, in Christian mysticism, is that this energy can be transmuted. Instead of flowing outward and downward, it can be redirected upward through the spine, feeding the higher chakras. This doesn't necessarily mean complete abstinence. It means conscious relationship with your sexual energy. If you engage sexually, do so with awareness, with love, with the intention to circulate energy rather than merely release it, or explore periods of celibacy to feel how your energy shifts when it's conserved and sublimated. Finally, surrender. This is the paradox. You practice, you prepare, you purify, and then you let go. You can't control the Kundalini awakening. You can't schedule it in your calendar. The serpent rises when grace meets readiness. So after all your effort, you must release attachment to results. You must trust the process. Trust the divine intelligence within you that knows exactly what you need and when you need it. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Not my will, but yours be done. This is the ultimate practice, surrendering the ego's agenda to the divine unfolding. When the serpent does begin to rise, you'll know. Your body may shake. You may see lights or visions. You may experience waves of bliss or temporary disorientation. Stay grounded. Keep breathing. Don't tell everyone about your experiences. Spiritual pride can derail the entire process. Stay humble. Stay in practice. Remember that awakening isn't a destination. It's an ongoing deepening into the truth of what you are. So here we are, at the end of this journey through forbidden knowledge, through the teachings that were hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. And if you've made it this far, If you've stayed with me through every word, then something within you recognizes the truth of what we've explored. That recognition isn't coming from your thinking mind. It's coming from the divine spark within you, the serpent that knows its own name, the monad remembering itself. The institutional church made the serpent evil because an awakened humanity threatens every system built on control, fear, and external authority. They couldn't destroy the teaching entirely. Jesus' words were too well known, too widely circulated. So they did something more insidious. They preserved the words but changed the meaning. They turned an inner path into an outer religion. They transformed direct experience into belief. They replaced the narrow gate of actual practice with the wide gate of passive faith. And for centuries, it worked. Billions of people have worshipped Jesus without ever walking his path, loved Jesus without ever doing what he did, called him Lord without ever discovering the kingdom of heaven within themselves. But the truth doesn't die. It goes underground. It hides in mystical texts, in esoteric symbols, in the practices of yogis and Sufis and Kabbalists and Gnostics who kept the flame alive when Christianity forgot its own fire. And now, in this age when information flows freely, when ancient texts are available to anyone with an internet connection, the serpent wisdom is re-emerging. The secret is becoming known. The narrow path is being walked again. You are living in a remarkable time. The veils are thinning. What was hidden is being revealed. The great awakening that prophets have spoken of for millennia isn't coming in some distant future. It's happening now, in bodies like yours, in consciousness like yours, in anyone willing to do the inner work that Jesus actually taught. Remember this. Jesus wasn't asking you to worship him. He was showing you what you could become. Every miracle he performed was a demonstration of awakened consciousness, of the serpent risen to the crown, of the human fully merged with the divine. Greater works than these will you do, he promised. Not might do, not could do, will do. Because the same power that worked through him is coiled at the base of your spine right now, waiting for you to create the conditions for its rising. The path isn't easy. The narrow gate never is. You'll face doubt. You'll face fear. You'll face the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding. You'll face a world that calls you crazy for seeking direct experience of the divine, rather than settling for second-hand religion. But on the other side of that gate is a freedom so profound, a love so vast, a truth so luminous that it makes every challenge worth it. So I'll leave you with this question, the same question that has echoed through every mystical tradition, the question Jesus asked in 100 different ways. Who do you say that you are? Not who did your parents say you were? Not who does society say you are? Not who does religion say you are? But who do you say that you are when you sit in silence and look within? Are you just a body that will die and return to dust? Are you just a mind filled with thoughts that aren't even your own? Or are you something infinite wearing a temporary mask, something divine playing at being human, something that was never born and will never die? The serpent knows the answer, and it's waiting for you to remember. If this video has awakened something in you, if you feel the stirring of the serpent, if you recognize the truth beneath these words, then your journey has already begun. The fact that you found this video, that you watched until the end, that something in you resonated with this ancient wisdom, that's not accident, that's synchronicity, that's grace meeting readiness, that's the divine within you calling you home. Don't let this moment pass without acting on it. Begin your practice today. Start with just 10 minutes of conscious breathing, of silent sitting, of turning your attention inward. The kingdom of heaven isn't waiting for you somewhere in the clouds after you die. It's waiting for you in the temple of your own body, right now, in this very moment. And if you want to go deeper, if you want more teachings that bridge ancient wisdom and practical application, subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of seekers, a tribe of modern mystics who refuse to settle for surface-level spirituality. We're reclaiming the serpent wisdom. We're walking the narrow path together. The serpent is waking up. In you, in all of us. The monad is remembering itself. And no power on earth can stop what's rising. Type "I am awakening" in the comments if you commit to beginning this practice. Let's create a field of collective intention, because when awakened beings come together, we don't just change ourselves, we change the world. The truth will set you free. And you are the truth you've been seeking.